Okay, so a while back, I made a video revolving around three characters, specifically Sarada, Mitsuki, and Eida, and how I believe these three characters, right, are very pivotal and how their importance to Boruto's story, the overall series, is extremely, extremely important and impactful in the roles that they play, and ultimately where they lie in the story from the beginning all the way up until the most current iterations. Now, from the time when I made that initial video about all three of these characters, I'm actually happy that a lot of exposition and details and material around not just even one but all of the characters have been released since then. Around the time I think was right after Mangekyo Sharingan Sarada debuted, and that was when the idea first came into my mind to talk about these three characters, because I see what Ikimoto's doing, and honestly I believe, aside from obvious characters like Boruto, Kawaki, and then even in this case I say Himawari because she's Naruto's child, and of course the poster child for this entire series, for this entire EP, is forever going to be this nigga Naruto. But aside from those three characters, Boruto, Kawaki, and Himawari, I do think Eida, Sarada, and Mitsuki have some of the most important roles and most impactful moments on the story. And if I just even want to just separate that, I can even say on Boruto himself. So this video we will be focusing on Eida, and speaking about like just focusing on three major instances for her character. Basically how when she's introduced into the story, how she's depicted after she's introduced throughout the story, and then lastly what she truly desires, and how each of these pathways leads us to a different perspective on Eida. So in order to understand how important this character is to the story, we have to understand the character. So essentially that's what we have to do when we're breaking down these three topics right here. So that's what we're going to mainly be focusing on. And then the overall consensus, right? What's the whole entire point of this video, Black Uchiha? I really think, right, for these three characters, for Sarada, for Mitsuki, but right now for Eida specifically, there's going to be major moments upcoming within the story. And then solely focusing on Eida, I believe the major plot twist that will be unveiling throughout the story. I know a lot of people think Eida's gonna die, and a lot of people rightfully probably think she might die. This arc, we know that we have confirmation in a separate future, in the alternate timeline, that Kashakoji saw Eida did get devoured, more than likely by this guy Mamushi, as we see Himawari is lying dead in Inoja's arms. I don't think the plot twist revolving around that character is more so her death. It can be. Now, I can be extremely wrong, but I think it's a little bit more deeper than that. In order to understand that, like I said earlier, we have to understand her character. So, starting from the jump, originally in Naruto Next Generations, at the kickoff of the code arc, we understand Eida was basically introduced as the woman who knows all, this woman who knows everything, right? And at that chapter release, and even with the first chapter when she was revealed, right, her and Code are starting to form that alliance. We get introduced to Bug, we get introduced to Boro's facility, and we see essentially off rip how Eida's ability kind of works. So when she's introduced as this woman who knows all, this all-knowing being, the one that you essentially can't hide anything from in the world, right? The Kara organization was in shambles. Code was the last remaining member, and he was down a leader and an Otsutsuki respectively. So he said, I need to get my original powers back. He didn't go to the one person who can fix that. No, he went to the one person who, according to him, knew all in this world. Now, granted, however he was able to get from point A to point B, his releasal of Eida eventually led to him getting his powers removed. But when we first see her, she's introduced as this woman who knows all, this mysterious, this mystique type of figure, right? Kind of like an untouchable figure, because even then, after she's introduced, it kind of bleeds into how she's depicted, because Cole goes straight for the kill and makes a threat. And then we see off rip, none of that works, and she walks with elegance. She kind of talks with elegance, and the anime actually emphasizes, how much focus and detail Eida pays to like just the little things about her and the things that are around her. One of the first things she does when she awakens is goes to abduction, right? We already see basically when she's introduced how Ikimoto essentially wants us to view her, the type of light he wants to paint her in. And then we see how she's depicted throughout the actual story, interacting with other characters when she's very flirtatious, she's very taunting, and it's something that Bug actually warns Code about. Even going past her little brother's introduction, we get a glimpse of the contradicting idea that Eida is actually going to eventually not develop to be, but reveal herself to be. Because as time eventually goes on, we start to lose that kind of idea, that perspective. And I know it's not just me who has this type of point of view when it comes to Eida, because at first she seemed untouchable. It seemed impossible to even get to her or get around her. But now as the story goes on, she seems more and more grounded and more human, which kind of contradicts the extraordinary powers that she actually wields and the capabilities she has, both in world and out world, right? Ikimoto himself confirmed in interviews that Eida and respectively Damon, so their powers are so extraordinary and they represent these crazy things. However, she's just a girl when it comes down to it that's simply in love. And then Shikamaru goes on to say, as he's explaining her abilities to Boruto and the others, Shikamaru says if she wanted to, taking over the entire world would be easy for her. So we already have established consensus, both inverse and outverse, of how cracked Eida's ability is, but how simple, I guess you could say, her pursuit in life ultimately ends up to be. So when she's introduced and how she's depicted, it's kind of like a fantastical, like a image type of thing, right? You paint this image or you depict this image of somebody, or I guess you could say this idea of somebody. But you know how people say never meet your heroes, because then you truly see what life is like. And it's actually beautiful writing, because even within that very focal plot point, Mitsuki and Eida going on into Boruto Tubu Vortex had this very same conversation. Now I know Mitsuki is going to be one of the people I talk about in this string of character videos, so for the most part, that Mitsuki and Eida conversation, I will be saving the juice of it, the real meat of it, for the Mitsuki video. But it's very important to pay attention to the dialogue between the two in that conversation, because Mitsuki goes on to explain a lot of things, and he comes to the end of his exposition of saying that Eida and him are the same, in the idea that Mitsuki believed that as long as he had a son, it doesn't matter anything else that revolved around him, whether it be the people, the things, or even him himself. It didn't matter. But he understands as time went forward and throughout the last 3 years leading into Tubu Vortex, he needs self-affirmation first, because if he doesn't have that, then ultimately he loses the original idea that he even had of his son. So here in this conversation, Mitsuki is able to establish the idea that self-affirmation and self-love, basically self-acceptance, is something that is extremely important before embarking on the goals or the endeavors or the desires you have within this world. Because if you don't have that at first, then you can get lost in the sauce. Long story short, so that's why Mitsuki says he and Eida are the same. Essentially, Eida confirms it by saying, so you're basically saying, long story short, I'm not really in love with Kawaki, but rather I'm in love with the idea of being in love. And that's basically how we understand her character to be. Because after understanding, oh, she's untouchable, she knows all things in this world, we come to find out her true motives, her true desires. And that's where we see on this last standpoint what she truly desires. Well, what did she want? We think on the surface level it's simply a love or a relationship with Kawaki, but it's deeper than that. It's bonds. And the recent revelation with her and Sumire is something that comes full circles and ultimately connects that true desire and that true feeling that Eida has inside. Because as the episodes go on, as the chapters release, and as time goes by, even leading up to the moment that she casts omnipotence through Kawaki, we slowly start to see Eida less and less as this woman who knows all, or this woman who has all types of angles in the world that you can't necessarily hide anything from, to a vulnerable teenage girl who's lost in a cruel world, who only wants to find love, but ultimately is robbed of that luxury due to Amato's interference at whatever point in her life. Now, Eida herself has admitted that she has a deep hatred for this guy, Amato, and I don't doubt that in any capacity. But we have to look at truly what this girl desires, right? And I believe what she desires is beyond just a romantic relationship, but more so a bond, and something that Sarada and Sumire has officially fulfilled, but she still has much left to be desired. Now, going back to the conversation that she had with Mitsuki, one of the things that she stated by the end is that she wants to have a nice long talk with this guy, Boruto. Now, this can be looked as a false gun, but I believe it is a Chekhov's gun, something that we will be getting to much later on in the story. I believe Mitsuki opened the door, or I guess you can say open her eyes to the revelation, but Boruto is the one that's going to lead her through the pathway. Essentially what he did for Mitsuki, he's going to help her to basically confirm what she already knows or feels deep down, but then to take that actual step to move forward and break out of this self-suffocating prison that she essentially placed herself in. Now, Amato is the one that granted her this all-knowing ability, omnipotence, and unconsciously Eida was able to basically entice the entire world, make the entire world fall in love with her. Now, this is why she wants to kill Amato. This is why she initially expressed and stated her hatred for this guy Amato. He robbed her of the ability to experience true love. However, granted her the ability to have all the luxuries of the world and anything that she desired. So it's like it's like a very contradicting factor that is like an internal struggle with Eida, because we see that she enjoys doing the things that she wants. When she first arrived in the village, the first thing she did was tell Shikamaru she's gonna act on her own accord. She doesn't need an escort. She knows her way around and she can fly. She showcased her dominance upon immediate entry into the village. And even with those that fall under exceptions, slightly less so, I guess you could say in Boruto's case, because he was a potential interest as opposed to Kawaki, who she already set her heart and mind on at the time. But when Boruto was going to go after Kawaki initially, and then Eida in that exact moment decided to go shopping, right before Kawaki sealed away Naruto and Hinata, she reminded Boruto, because he hesitated in order to let her know, like, hey, you can't go anywhere outside of my line of sight. She's like, bro, I can do what I want when I want, so don't get confused. I'm complying with y'all. Y'all are not holding me hostage. So Eida is able to reap the advantages that her ability grants her. And there's times and times again without the story that we are reminded that she was introduced as the woman who knows all and this woman who knows everything. However, the more we get to see her character, we see her vulnerabilities and we see how much she actually cares about the bonds and potential relationships she can form within this life. So she's a very conflicting and contradicting individual, but internally she understands that what she ultimately desires is just a true bond. It's simply just a true connection, right? And she almost convinces herself that she can find that fully and truly with this guy Kawaki, but time and time again the events are unfolding in front of her eyes that lets her know it's more than that. It's more so like, oh, I want a relationship, or I want to be in love with this guy who probably isn't going to be affected by my ability, so he has to be the one to fall for me. She wants genuine interactions, and the fact that Kawaki had the ability to say no or yes is ultimately what drew her towards him. So Mitsuki was right in a sense that she was just in love with the idea of being in love, because she has to undergo her self-affirmation first. And in order to understand truly what he meant, because she realizes that, oh, Boruto helped you must have come to that realization. And Mitsuki, despite admitting he might have been a little bit presumptuous throughout that conversation, he says, yes, even though he had a feeling for a long time that his son may not have been his son, but it's something or a thought that he decided to just duck off into the corner of his mind. Right? So after hearing all of this, Eida comes to the conclusion maybe she needs to talk to Boruto, in a sense where she understands maybe a decision or action she needs to take. However, affirming with someone else or getting confirmation or reaffirming your true resolve with someone else will allow you to take that initial first step. Now, Eida's true plot twist within the story comes from how she ultimately will impact Boruto's story, even moving past omnipotence, because she's the reason his life is even flipped upside down in the first place, and she's already expressed remorse in that regard. So a death coming from Eida will be extremely impactful, will be extremely crazy plot twist, but I believe something that's even crazier after going through all of these details for the character is finding out how she ultimately comes to truly accept herself, understands her full desires, and then understand whether it be love for a relationship, love for a friendship, a bond or a connection, or even hatred for the guy who basically messed up her entire life and experimented on her and her brother. Whatever she realizes to be her true emotions is something that she's gonna have to accept and not. And then also makes deals and confirmations of wanting and seeking out his number one op being in Boruto. She agreed to not look over him or watch for him over the last 3 years until he returned to the village. She held up that end of the deal, and then she goes on to say that I want to have a conversation with this guy. So I believe until we get certain things to go down, right, Eida'S death could definitely be the major thing that drives the turning point for her character, but I believe it's going to be a self-realization. And it might be a point where she departs from Kawaki. Maybe she doesn't even go to join Boruto's side, but more so remains and stands that middle ground and truly embrace the role that the story initially introduced her in. Basically, the woman who knows all. This untouchable, unimaginable, and fantastical figure that you simply cannot get close to, rather than this girl who doesn't really understand or truly is confused about her emotions and what direction she wants to go and path she wants to walk down in life. Rather than being reactive, despite having the most broken and powerful ability in the world, she's going to be more affirmative and action driven, right? So I believe Eida'S character is very, very amazing. Aside from Boruto and Sarada, she's probably my favorite character within the story. So essentially my third favorite character out of all of these characters. I really, really love the direction and the story her character has been going from beginning all the way to Jump. So let me know how y'all feel about it. How do y'all see Eida, and from the point she was introduced into the story and even up until now? And do you think the major plot twist that will be coming around her character lies in her death, or ultimately in her self-actualization and realization, and an ultimate choice that whether it be Team Kawaki, Team Boruto, or simply Team Eida? Let me know your thoughts below. It's your boy Black with y'all, long face, skinny body. Until my next character video, holla at your boy. I'ma holla at y'all. Black with you out. Yes sir. Ski.